But first, the Far North Queensland Environment Group wants to know how a pro-dredging billboard was allowed at a community parade for the Cairns Festival. The billboard was accompanied by people handing out information leaflets to the crowd that were highlighting the importance of the Cairns Port to the regional economy, as well as discussing the desire to dredge it. CAFNEC says it also has concerns about a pro-dredging petition that it says has appeared in some of the city's libraries. Josh Coates is the director of CAFNEC. I spoke with him a little earlier.
Yeah, look, I think there's some questions that need to be answered here. What we've got is a situation where it's a festival parade, it's a non-political event. We're really wondering how a political poster or political billboard got to be included in the community parade. There's also some other questions that need to be asked here. I've had concerns raised by community members about pro-dredging petitions that have been appearing in public libraries. I'm just wondering, how that came about and whether we, as a community, think that's an appropriate way for our public libraries to be used.
If they're a community group and they've gone about this through volunteer work to put up this pro-dredging billboard, shouldn't it not be allowed to be included in a community parade?
Yeah, look, I think there's some real questions here as to who's funding this campaign as well. There's a few people at the big end of town who actually stand to benefit from this dredging, but really it puts at risk a whole bunch of other jobs in the tourism sector. It puts at risk our environment, of course, and our international reputation. Obviously, we've seen the threat of at-risk listing for our reef. That's been averted by some government policy that includes not having new dredging here in Cairns Port. I certainly wouldn't want Cairns to become known as the place that caused the reef to be listed as at risk. So I guess what I'm thinking is, who are these people behind this campaign? How did they manage to get this billboard? And did it happen at the last minute? I've been told that it has. I don't know if that's true or not. And was there any improper influence here? And regardless of all those points, is this really the kind of thing that we want to see in our community parade?
In your press release, it was mentioned that the Cairns Mayor, Bob Manning, who is publicly supportive of dredging, may have played a role in getting the billboard into the festival parade at the last minute. Where did that information come from?
That's certainly a concern that's been raised with me by community members. I don't know if that's true or not. Well, I am under the understanding that Bob's denying that, and of course that's his prerogative to deny that. I'd like to know exactly how that did happen and what the full process was behind that.
What about the libraries, the petitions in the libraries? Have you seen them yourself? Or?
Yeah, I just went into the library to get a book out the other day, and I was quite surprised to see a petition there on the desk. I know that I've had this reported by others, and I talked to the staff member there, and they didn't really understand. They just said it had come from council, and that they had to put it there. I don't think they were very happy about it being there.
Well, what's your concern with it? Can it not be there? Is there anything against it being there?
Okay, are we allowed to put a petition that's against the dredging in there? I don't know, to be honest. I've never seen petitions of this nature in the library before. I'm not quite sure that it is the appropriate place for those kind of things.
What do you think this is all saying, the fact that we're starting to see a bit of a bubbling up of the issue? I mean, from both, you're very passionately against dredging, but there's obviously people in the community that are passionately for it, and it seems as though you're unable to find a common ground at the moment where it can be discussed in a way that isn't going to lead to tensions.
Yeah, look, the tensions were really disturbing to me. I saw them firsthand, and there's a video on YouTube which people better get from the CAFNEC site that shows some people being very, very aggressive towards me and a couple of young ladies who were just there to see for ourselves what this billboard was and take a photo of it. It's something that people should see, I think. It was really quite disturbing and quite scary to me personally. In terms of what you're asking about, if there's any common ground, well, yeah, I think we've gone through a whole EIS process here. The government has come back and said on both environmental and economic grounds this new dredging doesn't stack up. We don't need the new dredging. Despite what this campaign is trying to tell us, the economic arguments don't really stack up. If you take into account the amount of cruise ship increases that are going to happen regardless of the dredging, and we're seeing that already. We're going to have a cruise ship based here in Cairns next year. Nothing to do with the dredging. It's not needed. We've got a viable alternative for those cruise ships. Think about the massive cost of this operation in terms of how much it's going to cost the taxpayer to dredge. do all the maths, and my back of the envelope maths comes out. It's going to take more than 25 years just to pay off the money the taxpayer would have to put into this, in terms of the supposed benefits that would come to Cairns. There are lots better ways that we can support our community, support our businesses, and particularly support our tourism industry that won't also put that same tourism industry at risk from both the environmental impacts and the reputational damage of new dredging in Cairns.
Josh Coates, back to your concerns about the billboard. How does the billboard being displayed at a community parade differ from CAFNEC setting up a stall at any community event or market that they choose to?
Well, it would be nice. Obviously, if this is somehow something that people see as acceptable, well, we'll definitely have something in next year's parade, and that's great. And if we're doing something that's non-political, non-controversial, then by all means, let's do that. This is a highly political argument, though. This is an attempt to influence government policy. It's a very, very political billboard, and certainly from my opinion, and the opinion of many of the community members who've contacted me, it's not the appropriate thing to see in our parade. It's very partisan, it's very one-sided, and it's not something that I think represents the broad community.
So you could have put a billboard in if you wanted. Did you ever consider putting a billboard in?
I must admit I didn't consider doing that.
And so you felt like maybe there was a bit of one-upmanship potentially here?
Not so much one-upsmanship, it's just as something that, I got lots of people telling me that this is not what they want to see in the Cairns Community Parade. This is not the way that they want, those kind of events used.
That was Josh Coates, the director of the Cairns and Far North Environment Centre. 222 is. Well, the Cairns Mayor Bob Manning has listened to the concerns raised by Josh Coates from CAFNEC. He joins us now on ABC Far North. Good afternoon, Councillor Manning.
Good afternoon, Matt.
Now, the float that we're talking about here, the billboard, the pro-dredging billboard, CAFNEC wanting to know what was the process behind it being allowed into the parade for the Cairns Festival?
I understand that an application was made late on Friday afternoon, and that was dealt with at management level, and a decision was made to allow them in. The first I saw of it was on the parade night. So
you had no role whatsoever in approving it, because that was the insinuation.
No. Well, if there are insinuations or statements made like that, I'm quite happy to test them.
What about the billboard being in this community parade? Now that you've heard that there's been concerns from within the community, do you think that it was appropriate for a billboard on an issue like this to be in the parade?
I think we got this whole thing is turning into a bit of a beat-up. It really is. I mean, there's an issue here which is, I wouldn't call it a political issue. I think it's an environmental issue. It's an economic issue. But to try and turn this into now some sort of a political beat-up, I think is a little bit disingenuous. Our management will go back now and look at the rules that apply in regards to parades like of this nature or carnivals of this nature, and really I think it's a great pity that CAFNEC is setting about to create division within the community during the festival period. I just think it's not real smart. But they will go back. It will be reviewed, and there will be more stringent rules that apply from here on in, and maybe that will mean that there will be other floats now that will be excluded because of to avoid this sort of thing from happening again.
Have any council funds been used in this pro-dredging campaign? Because that was another question. No. Okay, that answers that question. Councillor Manning, what about the petitions at the city libraries? We have actually had 3 or 4 people call the ABC Far North today complaining about seeing them in the city libraries. Is that appropriate for...
If you've had 3 or 4 people call in about it, and I think there's 165,000 people in Cairns, so it's a pretty low percentage so far. But the pro-dredging campaign asked if petition sheets could be placed there. Nobody has asked to sign them. It's whether people want to sign them or not. It's entirely at their discretion.
How do you feel about the fact that following the Cairns Festival, this is what we're talking about, or the parade anyway.
I'm not talking about it. In fact, I've got to get off because I'm supposed to be somewhere else in just a little bit less than 15 minutes, and I won't be talking about this again. But I think it's a great pity, and as I said, I think this is really just a beat-up.
Councillor Manning, thank you for making yourself available.
Out of nothing. Yep.
Okay, thank you. We'll be hearing from the group behind the billboard next.
ABC Far North.
The time is 16 minutes past 5. It's obviously a very issue that brings up a lot of things for a lot of people. And as we know, there aren't just people that are against dredging in Cairns, there are also people that are very much for the dredging of Trinity Inlet to really build up the port and be able to increase economic potential in the region. And some of those people were actually behind the float that we're talking about, the pro-dredging billboard that was on display during the Cairns Festival. There was also people handing out information leaflets that were telling people about the importance of the port to the Cairns economy and also outlining some of the reasons why people want to see Trinity Inlet dredged. One of the people who was involved in the float on Saturday is John Murphy. He's part of the Dredge the Harbour Committee, and I spoke to him a little earlier.
Number one, it's not propaganda, what we're getting across to the community. We're just showing them what it means, okay, to them. Look, this place, right at the moment, is in strife. We have businesses failing everywhere. We have bankruptcies. Okay, we don't have any work for our kids. We've got to send our kids away and our grandkids, okay, got to go away to other areas to try and get a job. Okay, there's just no jobs or no work here in Cairns. And one of the only industries that we do have left is tourism. Now, if we don't look after tourism and get those big cruise ships in, whereas people can walk down the town and spend their money, okay, and fill up some of those empty shops, well, we are in trouble. Right, so
I think CAFNEC were taking issue with the fact that it was a council-organised community parade, and there was a float in the parade that was looking to politicise an issue. What would you say to those accusations?
No, that's rubbish. Okay, like what we're doing is for the community, and the community are all part of what we're doing. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with politics, and really it's got nothing to do with CAFNEC. Bob Manning will tell you, the mayor himself, this is one of the biggest issues that he's ever faced while he's been in power, right, in Cairns. This is a huge issue. Okay, now if you've got a port, you've got to dredge it, and the same happens all around the world. Okay, we are a priority port. If you remember strategically how we're located, the Battle of the Coral Sea was fought and won from Cairns. Okay, we've got the HMAS Cairns, which is the third biggest naval base in Australia. Don't you think that in the future, from time to time, they're going to have to bring in bigger ships? Right at this moment, you've got the 7th Fleet, which is getting bigger and bigger all the time because we've got problems in the South China Sea. Okay, of course we have to have the port. We have to have that channel dredged so you can bring in the bigger ships.
Okay, but do you feel like your float had preferential treatment or special treatment from people who were sympathetic to your views?
No. Okay, it went in right because it was good for our community, and it is a huge community concern right at this moment. Okay, that's why the float was allowed to go in. When
you decided to put this into the community parade, could have you foreseen that it would create such a hullabaloo?
I didn't think anything of it at all. I didn't even know who these people were. I didn't know what the hell they were on about. Okay, they just suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and from what I could see, I thought they were going to try and deface the float. I thought that they were going to come along and with their slogans and everything, right, and give us a hard time. Okay, and they didn't even have the manners to introduce themselves. You know, where do these people come from? If Cairns is going to survive, we have to have a port. We are a port city. Whether UNESCO likes it or not, or the Palaszczuk government likes it or not, we are a port city. We always have been. Okay, and we always will be. You've got to remember, there's a huge region that depends on this place being a port, like Cape York Peninsula with all the the ports and the settlements up there that rely on Cairns as the hub, right away to the Torres Strait, up to the PNG. Okay, we are a vital hub, and this port is vital to a lot of people.
But John, the argument would be that the port's working just fine servicing those communities right now without needing to dredge it, expand it per se.
The port's not working fine, okay, because as you know, okay, sugar is one of our biggest industries around here at the moment, okay, and if you can't bring the sugar ships out fully loaded, does that make it viable? No, it doesn't. It makes it very inefficient and it makes it very expensive.
So that was John Murphy from the Dredge the Harbour Committee. We've had a look at all sides of the discussion today on ABC